Well, we're at 12 o'clock. We'd like to start and finish on time. First, I want to thank the audience for coming. I know people will be popping in late as we grow. This is a new subject. You're going to start to hear more and more about this subject, and we're honored to have Diana McElroy. Diana, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much. And this is one of the things that we'll talk about is we're working with Diana and some others to put on a cannabis entrepreneur conference. That what are we calling it, Diana?
The Cannabis Conference.
The Cannabis Conference.
Yes, taking canna and taking the essence of what an entrepreneur is and combining them and showing them how to succeed in this industry.
And we recognize that this in many ways can be very controversial, but clearly, and I've gotten enough testimony from folks about the medical benefits of marijuana to say this is really helped people and even I think saved lives going forward. And now the recreational, which is still not fleshed out in New Jersey yet, it's been approved by the voters. So we'll see where it goes. But this is a very legitimate medicinal application. And so that's where I think it's very, very, very important. So first, Diana, before we begin, I always like we have some new people who may not know about the Rothman Institute at Fairleigh Dickinson University. So I just want to say a little bit about who we are. We've been around about 30 years. We're one of the, I would say one of the most influential entrepreneurial programs at a university in New Jersey. Our focus is on promoting, supporting, and researching entrepreneurship with a special focus on veteran, family businesses, student businesses, and urban businesses. And so what we do is we write all sorts of articles, we advocate. We now have a small business development center that really allows us to provide free hands-on consulting to entrepreneurs and entrepreneurs that have a strong business idea. So if you're interested in that, please reach out to us. My email is dcaldwell@fdu.edu, dcaldwell@fdu.edu. So please feel free to reach out to us. But we also have expanded to some executive education programs. Right now, we're running a executive coaching program. So for those that actually work with executives and even do personal and life coaching, Joe Colantonio is our instructor, and we've just started our first program. We have a great cohort now, and we're going to offer it in the summer. So that's something that I would encourage people to be part of. We also are doing diversity consulting. We're doing some consulting for a wide range of other organizations around employment, developing employees, and other things. So exciting things are going on at the Rothman Institute. But today, as I said, we're going to do this Cannapreneur Conference on March 31st, and we're inviting all of you to attend. And so I got to know Diana. I have a show called Entrepreneur State of Mind, and she was on my show, and which went very, very well. And I learned a lot. I don't know much at all about this subject, and so you're all in for a treat. So Diana, first, tell me a little bit about your background. How did you end up in this space, and where did you grow up?
I grew up all over. Grew up all over. I believe I shared with you last time, but I'll share with everyone on this call. I am a first generation from Poland. I moved here when I was 7. And so when I say I've grown up all over, I really did, because we moved every 2 years. So I have very different, neighborhoods that I'm from.
Excellent. And I'm my dad was a Methodist minister in the Methodist Church. They move around about every 5 years. So I lived in 13 different places before, so I know what it's like to move around. And so where did you go to school? Where did you go to university?
Well, I am an alumni from Fairleigh Dickinson University.
Yes.
I can't tell you, I am beyond excited about this event, because to me, especially the Florham Park location was all of FDU, the reputation behind the university. I'm the first one in my family to go to college, and I picked it because it was a school that made me proud.
Mm-hmm. Excellent. Well, again, and FDU is really just a wonderful institution, and we at the Rothman Institute are really trying to, and working with Dean Pierre Baltazar to really try to promote entrepreneurship, because it's really becoming, there are more and more universities. I heard about 2 more today that are starting entrepreneur programs around the country. And so this is the future. And the cannabis entrepreneurship program is the future and the present in some places. And so So how did you get into the cannabis business?
But let me tell you, you guys aren't just working, you're actually supporting a entrepreneur. Like when you gave me this opportunity to throw this program, like you actually put your money where your mouth is and are taking a chance on an entrepreneur. So I must commend you and thank you because, a lot of people are like, yeah, we want to work with an entrepreneur, but what's their skill set? It's everything. It's a little bit of everything, right?
Well,
So thank you.
we're honored to work with you. You're a real dynamo and you have the entrepreneurial energy and spirit. So we know
And I
that
found
this is
something
what
that
you
I'm
do.
very passionate about. So that goes back to the question you just asked. I was a stay-at-home mom who kind of lost her track in the business world. And in 2018, I looked around and decided cannabis was going to be the next emerging market. It's going to be the IT from back in the day, and I started asking around, looking around for opportunities. And lo and behold, someone sent me an article that a farm that I used to take my kids to almost on a daily basis, because it was an easy stop. It was go there, they'd run around, they'd play, I'd buy them an apple, and then we'd go home. Instead of the ice cream shop every day, it was let's get an apple, let's get, whatever's in season. And we got
Right.
to know farmers. So I went to the town hall meeting when Terracent from New Jersey came down to this farm, and so did a lot of people with their pitchforks. And I sat in on the meeting and I listened, and quite honestly, what the executives had to say about this new industry really excited me. So I followed them out. I asked them if they're going to be hiring, and they did. They hired me as a consultant for the first year.
So for the audience, I want to slow you down there. Who
Yeah.
is Cannabis? Tell me about the company. What is where are they from? What do they do?
What they are a multi-state operator. So
Uh-huh.
they're a multi-state operator who is from Canada, but they came and started a division in New Jersey. And they also had purchased at the time Ilera Healthcare in Pennsylvania. So they have holdings everywhere. And they took a chance on me. They hired me. A year later, they called me back full time and said, listen, we finally have plants in the ground. The cultivation site is ready. Or I should say we had the greenhouse ready, and we need people. So I was one of the first 10 employees. And it was so exciting because it really was. It was a construction site. It was a farming site. We hired 80 individuals in 4 months,
Wow.
onboarded, trained, got to know. It really
What year was that?
awesome.
What
That
year was that?
was 2019.
Okay, all right. So not too long ago.
Not too long ago.
Yeah.
So, and then once we had product, we opened 2 dispensaries. And as community outreach, I was the person that dealt with the municipalities, dealt with, how do we kind of break the stereotype and the stigma behind the cannabis plant? Because there really is still a lot.
Yes.
It's changing. I mean, I made my own child cry when I told her that I was going to be working in cannabis. True story. She was much younger back then, and all she knew was cannabis meant bad. The whole medical part of it didn't exist in her head. And so the more I learned, the more I would bring it home to my kids and say, did you know? And then we started learning about stories of people in our life that we had no idea had utilized it as a medication themselves.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Well, but it's just I just laugh. Again, I've been around on this earth for a long time. I remember growing up, I would never think a parent would talk to a kid about cannabis. That is totally backwards from when I grew up. So,
it is so backwards. I'll share with you what actually changed the stigma for my daughter. She's always been like, very righteous. Like she believes in law. She wants to be a lawyer. And a boy in her class, when the class was asked what their parents did for a living, a boy in her class stood up and answered for her because she was too, I don't want to say embarrassed, but she was embarrassed. And he stood up and he said, her mom works for a medical cannabis, and medical cannabis is a medication. And you know why he said that? Because his sister had stage 4 cancer, and they utilized cannabis on her. So like, here was a child that like was speaking up for my daughter's mom, and she came home and she was like, oh my God, I can't believe he knows. you know, what you do. Yeah.
Yeah, well, it's, and again, and that's part of the myth. And as we go forward, we'll talk about recreational as well. I have friends in Colorado and California and other things, and learned a little more about that. And so, what are the, just for the, again, I like to always start with the basics, because a lot of people here are just new to this. What are the different aspects of entrepreneurial opportunities within cannabis?
Oh boy.
And,
So
and there are a lot. I mean, there are a lot, and so it's important for people to even now think about. It's not just about selling, right? It's not just about selling.
it's not, you know what? I'm gonna go through. It's the, sorry, I was going to go through but I like our conversation better.
Mhm,
It is a subject of great debate on like how you can make money in it,
mhm,
because there's so many aspects. You can have an ancillary business, meaning you're already a printer.
mhm.
You're already a printer. The cannabis space needs printers. Why? Because they have materials that they hand out. They have, brochures, the good ones. They have brochures they hand out in their lobbies, marketing material. You are shoot, when I laugh at all the different vendors we hired because we are a new industry. Balloons, we had customized balloons made. We
Mm,
had, cookies made for an opening. Why? Because A, it was a great way to engage the community because we were hiring someone from within. B, everyone likes a cookie at the dispensary opening. So when you think about, it's a whole new business coming in, and they need everything: packaging, they need drivers, they
mhm.
need, lab equipment, they need cultivation. It is an agricultural industry, so
Right.
it's giving boost back to the agricultural community in, machinists, in like when it's just mind blowing. If you go to a huge conference like MJ Biz is enormous, and you really see all the different people coming in and saying, we're part of this. We're
Right.
part of this, and we're a crucial part of this, and we're needed in this industry. It's kind of nice to see all the pieces come together.
Well, and it's interesting, and for those that hadn't thought about it, I was on the board of the United States Tennis Association, and it really hit me because the USTA does a study of the economic impact of this 2-week tournament. And actually, the USTA, the US Open, actually has greater economic impact than all of the Yankees, Mets, and Knicks games combined. And so, what
Yep.
we're talking about is the economic impact of this on, not just, you don't have to ever have touched or smoke or believe in this, but you can do all sorts of things. Everything from, and I understand some people can do banking. They can't do regular banks because of the federal regulations, but you can do banking. You can do, I mean, virtually everything. And so that's where it can really be a driver of economic growth wherever it is.
110%. And like, to your point, the industry is ripe to, if you make yourself a subject expert, for example, accountants, right?
Mhm,
The taxes behind this industry are completely wacky.
mhm,
Like you
mhm.
can't deduct your regular operating,
Expenses, right,
expenses if
right.
you're plant touching.
Mhm,
Well, that really gives you a disadvantage. And there's ways to, I don't want to say work around it, but there's ways to understand how to work within those confines.
mhm.
280 tax is what it's called. So you need an accountant who specializes and understands, okay, this is what is allowed, this is was not allowed. Because it's not a normal business industry. So right there, the accountants get a new job, right?
Mhm,
Like all of
mhm,
a sudden there's opportunity for accountants, that there's opportunities for people, but I don't want to scare people off because that 280E tax really
mhm.
only has to do on plant touching. And most people that are entrepreneurs are ancillary businesses. That means you don't fall under 280E. I
Right.
don't fall under 280E because I don't touch.
Interesting.
Yeah, I'm a
If you don't touch the
consultant.
plant, okay. So
Yeah,
that can still increase. So we have, I always like to
yeah,
call out Ron West, who's a regular. He's our chair of the accounting department at
yeah.
FDU. So again, and that's that is could really drive opportunities for tax experts and
Exactly,
others. And
exactly.
they,
Lawyers had to become, I saw a huge thrive in the law firms where certain people leaned in within a law firm and said, you know what? I'm going to be the resident expert on cannabis.
Mm,
And their careers have skyrocketed
yeah.
because, how do you differentiate yourself? Well, you differentiate yourself by becoming the expert in an emerging market. That's how you differentiate yourself. You might not be a better lawyer, but man, you know the laws of cannabis, and that's hot right now. So you could increase, I've seen young attorneys come up much faster in the ranks because that's what they provide.
I hadn't really thought about the professional development, but developing an expert, because at the end of the day, medical marijuana is here. It's not going anywhere because it
Nope.
works. But
Nope.
the recreational has been approved. So if I was a young up and comer, I would think about that. So tell us about some of the other slides.
Okay. So,
Yeah.
why cannabis and adult use versus medical use?
Mhm.
Cannabis has so many advantages to it that it's not even funny. Like, take the hemp plant alone, which was criminalized. The stalk was used for, or excuse me, stalk was used for the fibers for paper. It was used for clothing. It was used for, it is the most subs what's the term? Oh, I'm so sorry. My ESL is kicking in. Say sustainable
Mhm.
plant in the world.
Wow.
And it's one that utilizes the sun better than any plant. Like a cannabis plant will find the sun and they'll grow up to 20 feet, the hemp plant, which is a family member of the cannabis family. And, we don't have enough research, but there are so many studies showing that cannabis can help in cancer. The cells actually don't grow. They are, Rick Simpson oil has been proven to stop the cancer cells from growing and expanding. So it slows down the cancer. Maybe doesn't stop it completely, but it slows it down. And at the same
But one
token,
of the problems, to stop you there, so one of the problems I understand is because it's illegal federally, there's not as much research on it. So
there's no research.
it's that
There's
catch
no research.
22 is that it's illegal, so you can't research it. And so,
So this
I
is
mean,
what's
who
happening.
knows what it can and can't do.
Cannabis is the biggest growing international industry. Why? Because we as an industry have to look past our own borders because we all have something that's stopping us. So for example, in Israel, they are really a lot more advanced than we are on research because it's allowed there. So our industry looks to Israel and says, tell us what you know. We want to learn from you, or we want to send people to learn from you, which is pretty amazing because this is a new industry and already it's international. We look to Denmark and Holland on how to be better agriculturally. Why? Because they're rocking it, and they have been in other aspects. So we look to them. So it's funny. It's some industries start out and they have like a small scope. This one really has a big worldwide effect to it as well.
And a strong footprint. So yeah, let's take us through some other slides.
Sure.
I like them. So, all right. So yeah, talk about this.
So this is, there's so many layers to this, and I won't bore you with all the facts, but let's break it down. There's a bunch of rich white folks who were not going to benefit from this industry coming to market. They were not going to benefit with it staying in market because actually hemp and cannabis were used. They were mandated to be grown. In England, back in, I want to say the 1930s, you had to verify that you will grow hemp in order to get a citizenship in England. It was mandated that people, because it was such a renewable source, and it was during the wars, clothing was made from it, parachutes, prior to that, the wagon covers were made from hemp. So, but the problem is it started infringing on someone's pocketbooks.
Right.
And the pocketbooks that it infringed on were mainly paper. They were, they looked around and said, there's a number of families that looked around and said, oh, this is not good. This is not good that this, this product that's so easy for people to grow is going to stop our business. So what did they do? It's the lobbying campaign, and they outlawed it. They outlawed it. And at the same time, it was a really easy way, very easy way to become racial with it. Why? Because Mexicans were bringing it up. Oh, well, it's a bad thing. So look at the Mexican men. There was actual ads that said that if it made Black men more confident to approach white women. And there was such a racial divide back then
I didn't
that
realize
like,
the
there was
history.
the history is so ugly. It's
I knew
so
it was
ugly.
out. I knew it was outlawed. I was actually in South Africa in 1986 during apartheid, and they were talking about hemp and all the stuff and why it was outlawed, because it did infringe on
Yep.
certain businesses. But it's like bamboo, that it can be used in all sorts of things. And so as we go forward, now I did hear, and John Harmon, my friend, who's the executive director of the African American Chamber, sent a letter to the governor indicating, and I'm big on New Jersey certified veteran businesses, New Jersey certified women businesses, New Jersey certified minority businesses. And none of the certified New Jersey businesses have been awarded any license with this, because of the requirement that you have to own property to control that. And so it really has not been, and again, I'm this advocate, if you're certified in New Jersey, you should get a priority to do things in the state. And so that history is very important, and the president, there are people advocating, and I think New Jersey will hopefully get it right to, going forward.
Well, they're trying, and I hope their momentum behind it and their rationale behind it is they're going for social equity first, which I agree with. I hope that, it's funny, on the flip side, guess who kept this industry relevant?
Right.
Guess who kept growing? Guess who who understands the plants? Guess who understands, imagine tomorrow tomatoes are outlawed, right? No tomatoes.
Right.
Well, I'm going to tell you, my Italian friends are still going to grow tomatoes. Why? Because it's part of their culture, because it's what they do. And they know that the tomato is not hurting anyone.
Right.
So it's the same, and
Well,
now
yeah,
it's,
yeah, it's right. And there's so many things that are there. And so I always say, follow the money. One of the things I learned at Wharton is always follow the money, and you find answers to all your questions when you follow the money. So good. What other slides do you have?
sure. So New Jersey and where we are. New Jersey, there's right now, a survey came out that there's 8 states that are going to balloon up, and they're the ones that are really going to be the revenue makers, and New Jersey is on top of the list. So that's what's exciting in our state, because when we go into, by the way, I don't like recreational, I like adult use. I'm very specific about it, and that's the mom in me. I think, as I tell my kids, you can't drive, you can't drink, you can't swear. I could cuss. You know why? Because I can. You can't use cannabis either, unless you're a patient with a caregiver. But even then, children only can become patients if they have caregivers who are administering
Right. Okay.
Well,
that's
I like the term adult use. When adult use comes out, they had a date of February 22nd of this year. We're not going to meet that deadline. We're not going to meet that deadline because there's a lot of one of the reasons given is Jeff Brown just stated that it's not a concrete date, as there's not enough buy-in from the municipalities. That's just one of the issues. There's many other layers to why we can't, as a state. Everyone keeps asking, when's the light switch coming on? When's the light switch coming on? And unfortunately, there are some barriers. There's rules that the existing cultivators, and most of them have vertically integrated licenses, which means that they could grow, sell, manufacture. They have to have enough product to support the patients, because patients come first, because that's how this industry opened up.
right.
The patients were the ones that really pushed forward. Like if you look at it, Dominicans, Black, brown people kept the plant going. They kept the culture going. Patients were the ones who started screaming and going, that stuff's good for me. Let me have that stuff. Like, why are you making it? Why are you hurting my friends? And that stuff's good for me. And it's like this, this movement that happened.
So going forward, because the history is there, but the February date is, and so what do you anticipate? So just so others know, so the voters approved
Yes.
you know,
Yes. So
largely.
it's been decriminalized. That's what
Okay,
happened. It
okay,
became
so it's been,
decriminalized.
but now
But
a lot of municipalities have come out and said we don't want it in our backyard, and
well,
so,
you know what?
but some have said we do want it, right?
Well, I think the smart ones, and I know a couple of them, and I always praise them. The smart ones saw it as coming, and they looked around and said, "Okay, we need to educate ourselves, and we need to set boundaries, and we need to figure out how this will serve our our constituents, and going forward." So you don't. I
So
personally don't
right,
want a dispensary on every corner. I don't.
right,
As
right,
a, yeah, I
right,
don't.
right.
It's like liquor stores. I don't want a liquor store in every corner. Do I like having a convenient liquor store? Uh-huh. Like, like, but it has to be within reason. So I think the municipalities that were forward thinking went out and learned, and they now realized, they taught themselves. A lot of municipalities were afraid, so they didn't educate themselves. And now they're behind the eight ball, and they're trying to get up to speed, and they're trying to understand what limitations they're going to
Well,
put into.
there's still a lot of politics around it. So let's say, okay, for the municipalities that do that, it's been approved in the state. What does it look? What does a healthy adult use look like? What are the, I have no idea. I don't smoke. I have asthma, so I don't put anything in
Yep.
my lungs. But what would it look like? You and I had talked on my show about really measuring, and it, everybody have their own customized. So what does it look like from a recreational standpoint when it's done well?
Well, when it's done well, like I've been to Massachusetts, for example, and it's done well there. You go in, say similar to a liquor store, except even more so, because you're not allowed to step foot into the building until your ID is checked. Liquor store, you go around, you fill your cart, and then they check your ID.
Mhm.
This, you're not even allowed to go in. And the products, depending on where you go, sometimes they have in like under glass, and you could look at the product that you're buying.
Mhm. Mhm.
Our one of our dispensaries actually had like clear, everything is tethered, because you have
Right.
to remember, cannabis is um cannabis is treated like the alcohol and gambling industries combined.
Mhm.
It's
Mhm.
highly regulated, and it's highly scrutinized. That's why
Right.
you need a license. You can't just open a liquor store.
Right.
You have to have the license. And the same with, in a gambling facility or establishment, everywhere where there's money, there's eyes. The same
Mhm.
with a dispensary. Everywhere where there's product, there are eyes, there's cameras. It's a very, when it comes to security, especially, it's a very scrutinized industry,
Right.
because it
Right.
is cash. It's also a cash, industry. So they want a cash only. So they want to make sure that, people inside the dispensaries are safe. They want to make sure that, deliveries are done safely.
Now, can
So
you use your credit? Can you use your credit card, or is that
no, not yet. Not yet in New Jersey.
really? Oh, really? Oh,
Yeah,
really? Oh,
yeah.
interesting.
Some,
So it's all
um,
cash.
it's all cash. It's all cash. Yeah. Because it's still a federally,
Right.
substance one illegal illicit drug. So no.
So now you had talked about, so they're folks who are experts in it, and they help you design. Talk about how, for those that don't, like me, that don't really know much about it, how is that there are different regulations, there are different types of marijuana and other things. Talk a little bit about that.
Sure. So there's different forms of consumption. There's different, if that's what you're asking, like there's different states allow different forms of consumption.
Mhm.
New Jersey right now is being very limiting.
Mhm.
And it actually is, the patients are suffering from it, because really they're the ones that want different forms, because, you know, um, a topical works differently than something that, a gummy that you take
So what
orally.
are allowed in New Jersey medicinally? What is allowed?
You could
What
have
kind?
flour, you could have tincture, you could have extraction, like vapors,
Okay,
um,
okay.
and soft lozenges. But
Okay,
like,
so explain,
yeah,
explain no, for again. I want to slow you down because again, I don't know. So flour is smoking, right?
yes, flour is the
Is it
old fashioned, yes,
the old-fashioned
smoking. Yeah,
cigarette? And
yes,
tincture is
yes.
what? What is tincture?
Tincture is a droplet. It's a very
Okay.
condensed form of
Right.
cannabis, and
Okay.
it's usually clear, and you put it under your tongue, and yes, it goes through your gut. Then you have
Topical? Can you do topical in New Jersey or no?
no, I don't believe we can do topical. And
Oh, really?
it's so
Okay.
funny. I actually have to refreshen myself because it does change.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
haven't worked in a dispensary in a couple of months. So
Right.
I actually have to go back. And I don't, one of the things that I've set a course for myself is I need to start going to more dispensaries in New Jersey, because I find the ones in Massachusetts a lot more interesting
Mm,
just because they offer other options. So
right.
as a patient, I prefer to have more options and see what, what works. They also, I find that Massachusetts allows for smaller, cannabis is a dosing journey,
Right.
meaning it's not an Advil. You don't know. So you have to try different forms. Well, that gets expensive.
Right.
So, one of the things I'd like to see in New Jersey is almost allow sample packets so people can actually try the product and say, oh, it really will help with my anxiety, or it really will help with my,
So now you said, but there are three different types, or there are three types of marijuana that you mentioned, I think three types.
yep,
Yeah.
yep.
What are the three types?
So, oh, do you mean indica and sativa?
Yeah.
Is
Yeah.
that what?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. And a hybrid. Yes. So there's, sativa. It's funny because the industry is actually just recently getting away from it because we're
Mm,
getting a lot more information, and we're getting more educated. So now people are really zeroing in into the terpene profiles, into the entourage effect, where it used to be we used to talk about indica. You want to
right.
go to sleep, indica is going to put you to sleep.
Right.
You
Right.
want a little more energy, then sativa is going to put you, going to give you that lift. Hybrid happens to be, a mix of both. So
Right.
it's more even. But again, the industry is getting very sophisticated because we really care, and we're trying to fine tune the medication for ourselves and for other patients. So we're starting to, tune in on, like, okay, lemon meal. What is that? Lemons. What effects does that have on your body?
Mm,
So you're going to see over the next couple of months, the consumers are going to be a lot more educated, and a lot more, and it's needed. It's really needed in a market. If the market's going to do well, patients need to see on the labels what's in it so they
right.
can fine tune their own medication.
And so, but so they're going to move away from those different types that you would mention,
Um,
and
I
or
think
give
they're
them.
going to be, I think they're always going to be used, but
Mhm,
I'm not a scotch drinker, but apparently there's different types of scotches, right? And like
mhm.
people understand that it's like not all scotches, or I think tequila is even more
Right.
fine
Okay.
tuned. Yeah. So people are becoming more and more, fine tuning what they're looking for. They no longer come in and go, I just want activity. They now
Right.
come and say, I want creativity. I want, so when I find a medicine that works for me, will actually make a label and say, this helps me with creativity. This
Well,
helps me with mood enhancement. And then I try to find like what terpenes and what profile is actually having that effect on my body.
so that, and that's an important thing, and that's one of the things that I've learned is because frankly I fall into the old stereotype is that the typical marijuana person is really mellow and very relaxed and
Yep.
talks very slowly, and clearly I meet you and you're the total opposite of what the stereotypical is, and so, and again I admit, I fall into that stereotype. This is what, pot
No,
smokers,
and
this
it's
is what they
funny,
do,
if
and so
most
it's
people
important
that
to break it down.
it is important to break it down, and it's important to realize that unless you've actually sat in a dispensary all day, like I have, and watched the people coming in, you would be shocked at who actually utilizes the product and why. Because part of community outreach is I would talk to patients coming in,
Mhm.
welcome them in, and, is there something specific that you're looking for? And, you'd have a just, someone who comes in and looks the stereotypical, and then a finely dressed person, and you would never back in when I judged people by their appearance, consider them to be the cannabis user. No, they found that this medication is working for them. They found they're bringing their children in because it's an alternative medication for their children for anxiety or for, you know, excuse me, epilepsy. So
Well, well,
it's really changing.
and so I know people in, Colorado and California who use it, the adult version, and I'm sure they've said, well, it helps me be more creative,
Yep.
or it helps me
Yep.
be more outgoing, or it
Yep.
helps me, and so what are kind of the categories of that? So it can relax you, it can make you hungry, it can increase your appetite, it can,
Yes.
what
Yep.
are kind of the categories of that?
So that is really fine tuning each patient, what they're looking for.
Mhm,
Each patient goes in and says, okay, I have pain throughout my body. I have
mhm,
pain throughout my body. I have inflammation. I have, chronic pain. So they're looking for pain relief.
right.
You have someone who comes in and says, you know what, I get anxious and I really want to, they use it as instead of a physical, they do get physical benefits as well, but they look as it for emotional and mental care.
Mm, mhm,
There's a lot of research going into the fact that PTSD benefits greatly,
mm,
greatly. I know several really good friends of mine who utilize it for various. One was an officer, one was an EMT, and the things they saw left them really profoundly um,
traumatized, yeah.
traumatized. That's why vets should be allowed to use it. I mean, veterans especially who has more trauma that they openly expose themselves to than veterans.
Mhm,
So there's so much out there that has to be taught and also broken down. And if we get, for example, if you are in a state run facility, you can't utilize this medication.
mm,
You can lose your housing. Just
mhm,
think about that. Just think about the effects of someone who, let's say they were, I'm going to use veterans. Let's say they were a vet that fought for our country and found that this is the only thing that is helping them.
mm.
If they are in a state-run facility, they'll lose their home.
Interesting.
But it blows my mind. It blows my mind because they're not breaking the law. They're not, but because it's state run,
Mhm.
federally run, that's where they break the law. So we need consistency. It's one of the main reasons I would like to see federal legalization, but I will tell you, I'm also afraid of big pharma. Big pharma is already buying up patents for certain things. So why I don't believe a plant should have, you know,
W so we have a question, now can you sell online or cross state lines, or,
So I'm not an expert on that. I have a friend of mine who's running a very viable, I call him a friend because I just met him, a viable company doing this, and he understands the implications and he understands all of the rules behind it. And
Mhm,
yes, it is apparently, that's not my expertise.
mm, mm.
There was too many laws involved. Do I want to learn the steps? Yes, but it's e-commerce is also big for cannabis. Take the plant aspect out.
Mhm,
What are these brands making money on? Their merch.
mhm,
What are they making money on? I mean, you look at the brand Cookies, right?
mhm,
Cookies makes so much on their merchandise because of their marketing, because of their, they have a hip brand. So forget the plant. Like
right.
there's other avenues, you're a great graphic designer and you design something for the cannabis industry that people want to wear. E-commerce right there.
Well, yeah, I talked to the founder of Cookies, and so Cookies, they use music and
Yep.
entertainment and other things to tie it into the brand, and where it is legal in California.
Yep.
So
Yep.
let's the elephant in the room is addiction. Yeah,
Okay.
this is
Yep.
all fine and good. It helps people, but will I get addicted to cannabis? Will it, talk to the group about addiction, and if you can get addicted, and what's the story around that?
So cannabis has now been used in multiple states as a form of helping people off of opioid addiction and other addictions. Cannabis itself is not addictive. Do I this is me, myself, and I. There's no study out there of people dying from cannabis. There's no proof of it, the addictive. Do I think there are people that can lean into it too hard? Yes. So I think it, like with anything, you have to be aware of where your usage, where your productivity, I mean, that's anything in life, water. Are you getting enough water? Or if not, you're dehydrating. Are you using cannabis too much where you're not productive anymore? Then yes, you're leaning into it too hard, So I think people have to be mindful of their productivity level and if it's enhancing their life.
Right. Well, and that's true with a lot of stuff.
Yep.
Whether it's alcohol or other things, if you find
Yeah.
yourself missing appointments because you're doing something, then there you may have a problem. And so now what about, and I know you're not an expert on the legislation. Now, what about those people? And I know a lot of the discussion and the delay was on people who have been put in prison because of the use of cannabis. And so part of it is in New Jersey, they wanted to kind of let people out who have done that.
They
and clear their
expunged, they did,
records and-
they did a huge expungement, but the problem was that there was an announcement released that we're going to expunge all these records. The
Right.
problem is the people who are already in the system were kind of left behind. The people going through the system that hadn't been, tagged yet, their records got expunged. So that's why, if you're wondering why there's still expungement clinics all over New Jersey, and my friends are running them, is because there's still a need. Because, you're good, you're letting everyone who got in trouble after out, but what
Right.
about the people that are still sitting there? Let's go, or what about the people who were in the in-between phase? They now have a record they have to go through and have an expungement clinic in order to get the jobs that they want, in order to support their families.
Interesting. So and that's fascinating. So all right, so we have we've talked about it. We've talked about different areas. I'm an entrepreneur. I'm doing whatever, and I want to get involved. And so, Diana, how do I do that? Who do I reach out to you and say I have a printing business, or I have some other business? How does someone get involved in the industry?
Well, ta-da! Thank you for
Perfect
queuing
timing.
me up.
Perfect
timing. One of the things that you can do to start off with is attending our conference. And the reason being is our conference is going to be filled in a room full of people who did exactly that. They took and saw the train coming, and they jumped on the train, and they've learned the lessons, and now they're ready to mentor the next person. And a lot of these entrepreneurs that have and are in the business, they've turned into consultants because they can't handle the work themselves. So they want to teach the next entrepreneur, and they want, or let's say it's a lawyer who comes into the room and wants to become a cannabis expert. Well, come meet all the other lawyers that are doing it already. And, it's a band of brotherhood in this industry where people really do, share information. It does take pulling up your sleeve and learning it. It does take learning it because it's a new industry, but it's also being in the right place at the right time with the right people.
Yeah, and also being, as I said, really understanding the medicinal benefits and others, that you don't have to be, just a cannabis, advocate or a cannabis evangelist, but it does help people. That has been proven, and so
Listen,
so it's a legitimate industry.
There's no shame in my game to admit that I came into cannabis because I saw it as a viable business and an industry. I saw it as an industry that a female who had stayed home for years building, I laugh. I'm like, you don't just show up at a PTA meeting. You volunteer, you run the things. You don't just become a member of the Moms Club. They throw you into projects. You're running huge charity. But how this industry took that skill set and said, oh, there's value in that. And not a lot of industries do that. This industry is one where if you are creative at what you do, it welcomes that creativity. You know, you don't have to do it the same old way that it's always been done, because this industry is thriving on people who are shaking it up all the time, every day.
Right.
So there's so many avenues to grow, and there's so many resources out there. And that's one of the, the things that I'm most excited about with our Cannapreneur conference is putting putting everyone together like a snow globe, shaking them up and say, now you all meet, now you all benefit, because, I want to put patients in the room. Why? Because the patients are going to teach the history,
Mhm,
and the
mhm.
patients understand the inner workings. I want to put, politicians. There's so many facets. There's so many legacy market.
Mhm,
The legacy market is important in this industry. Why? Because like I said before, they're the ones who kept the culture going.
mhm.
And without them, we wouldn't have a market, you know?
And
So,
I think one of the important things is that, I mean, you look throughout history of all the opportunities. I mean, if you invested in real estate and, in the early part of the 20th century, if you invested in IBM when the stock first came out, if you invested in Google when the stock first came out, so there's an opportunity now for people to get involved in something that we all know is going to be a big deal,
oh,
whether
it's a
we,
huge, yeah. And it's
whether
funny.
we use it or not, it's going to be a really big deal. And so, it's worth exploring and probably putting your hat in some way.
Oh, yeah. And sometimes, people think that they have to jump in with both feet. Sometimes
Mhm.
it's just even in partnership with someone else, sometimes it's just being in and saying, huh, I'm already doing that. And why don't you lean in on me? It you know, cannabis is just an entryway into a new industry. Like that's what people have to realize. It's a new industry that needs so many different widgets. And are you the widget provider?
Well, there's another aspect of it that we haven't talked about is the nonprofit side. So if you're
Yes.
in a nonprofit or with a nonprofit, what happens is this is a very, very rich cash business. And I have a foundation, and people have approached the foundation to say, hey, we'd love to partner with you because we'd love to utilize some of the profits to really make a difference in the community and help people who are struggling. So those of you that are in the nonprofit business that are listening, there are real opportunities to get funding to continue to do social good through the nonprofits. And I think that's even a requirement, isn't for a lot of the cannabis businesses.
Yes, they have social equity initiatives. They have, good community initiatives. They have, I'm listening to you talk, and think about all the research that's going to be needed, you
Mhm.
know? Think about all the research that's going to be needed for, like, even institutions such as, FDU, like that there's going to be federal grants on, like, okay, the public has spoken, they want this research to happen. We want to be the school that the research happens.
Mhm.
I'm just throwing that as an example. Like there's going to be so many opportunities for different avenues to be a part of it, you know. And yeah, the medical, I think medical coming down the pike, doctors, nurses, everyone's going to have to learn about cannabis. It
So
it yeah.
yeah, well, so you had early on, you had talked about, especially being an FDU alum, about the opportunity to kind of connect this with some of the business classes. So talk a little bit about kind of your vision of how can this be instrumental to students in a business school like Silberman at FDU.
Oh my goodness. So, okay, one way I look at it is take everyone from the legacy market, right? They know how that part works, but now they're coming into the the market itself. They need business training
Mhm.
because, they understand that part, but it's how do I now make a business plan? How do I now, get investors? How do I now build something from, I've done the hand, it's like being a great baker, right? You could be a great baker, but to open the bakery, you have to almost go back to business school, business 101, and say, okay, this is what it's going to take. This is what I'm going to need to find investors. I'm going to need to write the business plan. I'm going to need to understand how to keep my bookkeeping differently. So there's an avenue for the schools. You know, people who find it to be an interesting category. I know a lot of students who are going to pick it because they're just darn curious. They're just darn curious and they love seeing that word on their syllabus. And then they realize, it's a real business. Like it's a real, like I have to learn about, interstate commerce. I need to learn the laws. I need to learn. So there's a whole curriculum that can be built on a new industry that really teaches.
Well, the other side though is in California, Colorado, other states that have it, there are major case studies of financial issues, of operational issues, of marketing issues, of sales issues, of accounting issues, and so these businesses, and it's the same stuff that you can teach, but for students, it can be a lot sexier than talking about Bank of America. And
100%.
you can have the exact same problem, but you can go through the business problem, say, well, there's this cannabis business in California that did X, Y, and Z. And so it really can have some energy and relevance to the curriculum that gets young people engaged.
110%. I said that. I said, kids are going to come in, and I call them kids, young adults are going to come in. They're going to see the word cannabis. To your point, I use the same word. It's a sexy word, but what they don't realize is they're really learning business. But it's like, you throw an action word at your kids. They hear you, hear. Also, you throw an action word and your kids are like, huh? Did she say ice cream? That's what it does. It stimulates conversations. Like for me, I'm a boring mom in the suburbs. The moment I throw in a conversation that I work in cannabis, all of a sudden it's like, you do? I do. Like, what do I do? It's not that interesting, but I work in an industry that's interesting.
Well, and yeah, I think, and again, I love Bank of America. They're sponsors. They're wonderful, and we want to support them. But I want to talk about as we're coming up at the end of time, the finance. So all right, so you get this cash, and I think Bank of America and other banks are limited from actually taking the cash because it's illegal federally. So what do they do with the cash? Are there places? Credit unions I don't think can do it either.
Yes, they can. Credit unions can.
Oh, credit unions can. Okay.
Credit because they are run by their members. So unlike a federally funded or regulated bank, credit unions are regulated through its membership. So, but I don't know if I shared with you, when I went to open my account, and I've been with my credit union since AT&T Capital first got me in, so a very long time. When I went to them, and I mentioned like, oh, I'm starting a business. They're like, yay, go you. And I'm like, yeah, I'm going to be a consultant in the cannabis space. Ooh, hold on. And the woman actually had to call me back hours later. And I'm like, listen, you have my mortgage. You have we've been friends for 30 years now. You don't know if you want to be my friend. But they had to ask the uppers. And yes, credit unions allow them. But they thanked me for mentioning that I am going to have cannabis clients, because even for credit unions, there's this little gray area. So yes, banking makes it tough. There's a new bill in Congress right now, the Fair Banking Act. I mean, cannabis has our hands are tied. And it's not fair. The interest rates were charged, the banking fees. Oh my God, I just had a client opened up a new bank account. And it was $700 for him just to open up the account. And I'm like, why? And he's like, just because it's cannabis. I'm like, that's not fair. Like most banks want you to open up an account because you're going to be, bringing in business. You're going to be moving money through their bank. Nope. And then there's other fees on top of that $700. And then there's other.
So what kind of bank is it? Was that a credit union that did that?
That wasn't. That was
the private
yes.
bankers.
Yes.
That are doing this. And so, so that's important. So what what if you have a business that does other things, but then part of your business is touching, but you already have an account with a major bank? Do they seize the funds, or if they find out that you're what do you have
Depends
any
on the bank.
instance? Uh-huh.
Depends on it depends on the bank. And,
Mm,
some of them are now, they are opening subsidiaries that are allowing the banking.
mm,
So we're
mm,
not touching it, but our friend over there is. So they are, listen, the banks want to touch this money because banks are in the business to make money. And if an industry is, projected to grow in the billions, they want a piece of it. And so I think the banks are pushing to have, better banking laws. And the federal government is listening because the banks have sway.
and as I said, I mean, I said to folks that, I mean, again, think about this. If you were, if you were early investor in the railroads, or early investors in cars, or early investors in Silicon Valley, this is the kind of stuff that is not reached maturity yet, but it will. And
Yeah.
so as you, what are the odds of the federal? What are you hearing about the federal making it legal? Because if once it's legal federally, that's a game changer. That'll change everything.
It will. And
What are you hearing?
it's not going to happen anytime soon.
Really? Yeah.
Yeah, the Democrats have their own act, the Republicans have their own. And it is like with anything, how when a law is being written, everyone throws their little bit into that law, into that bill.
Yeah.
So like, it's like my kids negotiating for something,
Yeah.
and they just a little more, let me push a little more and push them a little more till finally I'm like, you're not getting it. Like you pushed me too far. And that's what's happening with a lot of these bills, is they're just adding on. Everyone has an angle. I think that's just the way that government is run, is everyone wants to see their objective in there. And quite honestly, the industry is not sure how we feel about it, because with federal regulation or deregulation, it's who's going to own the industry? Are we going to lose the industry? Are big corporations going to come in? Like I said, big pharma, are they going to come in and just swallow it up whole? And then there's not going to be these opportunities for an entrepreneur like myself. There's not going to be these so it's a mixed bag. But then with federal
Decriminalization.
decriminalization,
Yeah.
decriminalization, we could have better research. So
Mhm.
that would be beneficial to patients. We could potentially have the products covered by insurance, because let me tell you, they are extremely expensive. The medication is extremely expensive. And if you want to do it right, you want to go to the dispensary because you want your products tested, and you want to know what's in them, and you want to understand the THC level, and you want to be safe. But no wonder there's a legacy market or still going on, or an illicit market going on, because the patients can't afford it. So that's like a plus. If it was decriminalized federally, that insurance companies would hopefully have to pay for it.
So I didn't realize that the medicinal stuff is very expensive.
It is. And so is
Really?
the adult use. The market, it's not cheap. It's not cheap.
Right.
That's why, we fight to keep the taxes down. That's why there's a cap on municipalities, that they could only add another 2% tax on it, because look at what happened in California. They're taxing a product 47%. No,
Wow.
thank you. I'm going to go buy it on the street corner,
Right.
because like I already pay my city taxes, I pay my home taxes, I pay my blah, 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 and then you're going to tax my medication 47%. Like,
Interesting.
yeah, that's why California is sinking. Their illicit market is going rampant, because people are looking and going, not worth it. Yeah.
Well, so we're at the end of time, and so Diana, I want to thank you. You're always a wealth of information. Reach out to us at the Rothman Institute, or Diana. Could you put in the chat your email contact information? Put that in the chat for folks. You can reach out to us, and we can connect you with some other folks that are involved in this. March 31st is our conference at FDU. And the first in the state of the Cannabis Entrepreneur Conference and they'll have a lot of information, a lot of contacts. How do you grow a business? How do you create a business? How do you get into the business without even touching marijuana? And so so it's a great opportunity, especially for small businesses. So I want to thank you all for watching. We had a great crowd today. Have a wonderful weekend. It's snowing. Stay warm and dry. Take care. Have a good one.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.